What happened when the other family showed up at Thanksgiving? The text message from an unknown number arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, just as I was picking up my daughter Emma from soccer practice. Hi, this is David Chin. I think we need to talk about our spouses. Can you call me when you're alone? Asterisk. My hand started shaking as I stared at the screen. David Chin. I knew that name. Michael had mentioned a Dave from work whose wife Lisa worked in their marketing department. The same Lisa who had been requiring so much of my husband's attention during those mysterious late meetings and weekend emergency projects over the past 6 months. Mom, you okay? Emma asked, climbing into the back seat with grass stains on her uniform and dirt under her fingernails. You look weird. I'm fine, sweetheart, I managed, forcing my voice to stay steady. At 8 years old, Emma was already too perceptive for her own good. Just work stuff. But it wasn't work stuff. It was the phone call I'd been dreading and hoping for an equal measure. After months of Michael's increasingly elaborate excuses, his phone calls in the garage at 11 p.m., his sudden interest in working out and buying new clothes, and that sick feeling in my stomach that something was fundamentally wrong with our marriage, someone finally had answers. I dropped Emma off at home where my mother-in-law was watching 6-year-old Jake, then drove to the Starbucks on Maple Street. My hands were still trembling as I dialed David's number. Sarah? His voice was tired, defeated. Thank you for calling. What do you know? I asked without preamble. 8 years of marriage to a man who'd been lying to my face had apparently killed my ability to make small talk. I have photos, he said quietly. Hotel receipts. Credit card statements showing dinners for two while you and I were both home with our kids. Text messages. He paused. A lot of text messages. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too bright. How long? Based on what I found. At least 8 months. Probably longer. 8 months. I thought about Emma's soccer season, Jake starting first grade, our anniversary dinner in September where Michael seemed distracted and kept checking his phone. All of it had been happening while he was building a secret life with someone else's wife. The Marriott downtown, David continued. Every Thursday for the past 2 months. Room 847. They think they're being careful, but Lisa's been sloppy with her phone. I saw everything last night while she was in the shower. I closed my eyes, remembering Michael's new Thursday routine. Partnership strategy meetings, he'd call them. Really boring stuff, hon, you wouldn't be interested. Sarah? You still there? Yeah, I whispered. I knew something was wrong, but he kept telling me I was paranoid. That I was imagining things. They're planning to spend Thanksgiving together, David said, and something hard crept into his voice. Found the texts this morning. Some story about having to work through the holiday weekend. Emergency client deadline. Thanksgiving. Our first holiday in our new house. The one Michael had suddenly seemed reluctant to host. The one where he'd suggested maybe we should keep it small this year and not stress about extended family. David, I said slowly, an idea forming. What if we gave them the Thanksgiving they're planning? All of us together? There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, tell me more. The plan we hatched over the next hour was elegant in its simplicity. David had already done most of the detective work. He knew Michael and Lisa had booked a business dinner at Romano's Italian restaurant for Thanksgiving night at 7 p.m. They'd told their respective families they had to work late, then planned to meet for what the text messages called our own private Thanksgiving. Lisa told our kids she'd be home by 9 p.m. with takeout, David said, his voice getting harder with each detail. Said the client was demanding a presentation first thing Friday morning. Michael told me the same thing, I replied. Almost word for word. We spent another 30 minutes coordinating our counterplan. David would call Romano's, claim to be Michael's assistant, and change their reservation from a table for 2 to a table for 12. He'd also upgrade them to the private dining room. Mr. Harrison wanted to surprise his wife with a family gathering, David would say. Michael's credit card was already on file for the reservation, so the restaurant wouldn't question it. Meanwhile, I would invite both sets of parents, our kids, and David's family to a surprise Thanksgiving dinner that Michael had supposedly planned. David would do the same with Lisa. She'll try to back out, David warned. Lisa hates surprises, especially ones involving family. So does Michael, I said. But that's what makes this perfect. They can't say no without seeming suspicious, and they can't come up with an excuse fast enough to get out of it. The hardest part was selling it to our families. My mother-in-law, Patricia, was immediately skeptical when I called that evening. Michael planned a surprise dinner, she asked. That doesn't sound like him, dear. You know how he is about restaurants, always complaining about the noise and the prices. He's been different lately, I said, which was the most honest thing I'd said all day. Really focused on family time. He specifically requested you bring your famous stuffing. That sealed it. Patricia Harrison had never met a compliment about her cooking she didn't believe. My parents were easier to convince, they lived 3 hours away and were thrilled not to have to cook. David's parents and his sister's family agreed to come when he told them Lisa had specially requested their presence. By Wednesday evening, everything was in place. 12 people would be arriving at Romano's tomorrow night expecting a lovely family dinner. Only 10 of us would know what was really happening. I lay in bed that night listening to Michael shower, probably washing off whatever cologne Lisa preferred. He'd been working later and later each day this week, coming home after the kids were asleep. When he slipped into bed beside me, I had to bite my tongue to keep from confronting him right then. Big day tomorrow, he murmured in the dark. Yes, I agreed. It really is. That client presentation is going to be brutal. I'll probably be late. Actually, I said, my heart pounding, I have a surprise for you. I made dinner reservations for tomorrow night. Romano's, 7 p.m. I thought it would be nice to have a real Thanksgiving dinner instead of takeout. The silence stretched so long I wondered if he'd fallen asleep. Then, Sarah, I told you I have to work. I know. That's why I made the reservation for 7 p.m. You'll be done by then, right? Another long pause. Right. Of course. 7 p.m. sounds great. But his voice sounded anything but grateful. It sounded trapped. Perfect. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. Michael was up before his alarm, pacing around our bedroom like a caged animal. I pretended to sleep while watching him through barely open eyes as he checked his phone obsessively, 12 times in 15 minutes by my count. "Sarah," he whispered. "You awake?" I kept my breathing steady and didn't respond. He crept out of the room, and I heard him talking quietly in the kitchen, presumably to Lisa. The hushed, urgent tone was one I'd become familiar with over the past months, though I'd never understood its significance until now. When I finally made my appearance downstairs, Michael was already dressed in his best suit, the navy Tom Ford one he bought 6 months ago, claiming it was for client meetings. He barely looked at me as I poured coffee. "About tonight," he started, then stopped. "The thing is, this client situation is really complicated. I might need to cancel dinner." Emma looked up from her cereal. "But Dad, you promised we could get tiramisu. You said Romano's has the best tiramisu in the city." My clever daughter. I coached her just a little bit the night before, and she was playing her part perfectly. Michael's face went pale. When did I say that?" "Last night, when Mom told us about dinner," Jake chimed in helpfully. "You said it would be the best Thanksgiving ever and that Grandma Patricia's stuffing goes really good with Italian bread." Michael shot me a panicked look. I just smiled serenely and buttered my toast. "The kids are so excited, honey. And your parents are driving down from Rochester. They left at 6 a.m. "My parents?" His coffee mug clattered against the counter. "Sarah, what parents? What are you talking about?" "Your surprise Thanksgiving dinner, remember? You asked me to coordinate with everyone yesterday morning." I pulled out my phone and showed him my call log, calls to Patricia, my parents, David, listed as Deech and Emma's friend's dad in my contacts. "Everything's confirmed. 7 p.m., party of 12. The color drained from Michael's face completely. "12? Whose?" "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Is there?" I asked innocently. "Because you seemed really specific about wanting both families there. You even mentioned inviting the Chins, you know, Dave and Lisa from your office. Said it would be nice to finally meet Dave's family socially." Michael's phone started buzzing. He glanced at it and I caught a glimpse of Lisa's name on the screen. He declined the call. "I need to step outside and make a work call," he said tightly. "Of course you do." While Michael paced frantically in our backyard, gesticulating wildly at his phone, I received a text from David, * Lisa's losing her mind. Tried to call in sick to the family dinner. I told her my parents already drove 4 hours and would be devastated. She's trapped, *. Another message, * found something else last night. Hotel loyalty program emails. They've been doing this for over a year, Sarah. Different hotels, but same pattern. Every Thursday, plus weekend trips when we thought they were at work conferences, *. A year. Not 8 months, a full year. I thought about last Thanksgiving, how distracted Michael had been. How he'd stepped outside for work calls even then. How Lisa had sent him a text during dinner that made him smile in a way that hadn't included me. My phone buzzed again, * one more thing. Lisa bought lingerie yesterday. $300 at Victoria's Secret. The receipt was in her purse this morning, * $300. For underwear she'd never worn for her husband. For my husband. Michael came back inside looking like he'd seen a ghost. His hair was disheveled and there were sweat stains on his expensive shirt despite the November chill. "Sarah, we really need to talk about tonight." "I don't think." "Daddy." Emma ran up and hugged his waist. "Will you sit next to me at dinner? I want to tell Grandma Patricia about my science project." He looked down at our daughter's hopeful face, then at Jake who was excitedly talking about showing his grandparents his new Pokemon cards, then finally at me. I kept my expression perfectly neutral, perfectly supportive wife-ish. He was completely, utterly trapped, and we both knew it. "Of course, sweetheart," he told Emma, his voice hollow. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." 6 hours, I thought. 6 hours until everything explodes. The afternoon dragged by with excruciating slowness. Michael disappeared into his home office around noon, claiming he needed to prepare for the client meeting, but I could hear him on hushed phone calls through the door. His voice kept rising and falling in what sounded like arguments, followed by long periods of silence. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. "Patricia." "Sarah, dear, I'm having second thoughts about this dinner," my mother-in-law said, her voice strained. "I just spoke to Michael, and he seemed very confused about the arrangements." "Are you sure he planned this?" My stomach dropped. Of course Michael would try to sabotage this from every angle. What did he say exactly? He asked if I was really sure about driving all the way down for a restaurant dinner. Said something about how expensive Romano's is and how the kids don't usually like Italian food. It just seemed odd, dear. Not like him to second-guess his own plans. I gripped the phone tighter. "Patricia, you know how Michael gets when he's stressed about work. He's been so overwhelmed lately that he's probably just worried about being a good host while dealing with this client crisis. That's exactly why he wanted to take everyone out instead of cooking, less pressure." A pause. "Well, when you put it that way. And I did already make my stuffing." "He's going to be so grateful you're there," I said, which was probably the biggest lie I told all week. 7 p.m. sharp, okay? He made me promise everyone would be punctual. After I hung up, I found Michael in the kitchen stress-eating leftover Halloween candy. The Tom Ford suit had been replaced by jeans and an old sweater. "Changing your outfit?" I asked casually. He jumped like I'd caught him stealing. "Just getting comfortable before I have to get ready for work tonight." "For dinner, you mean?" "Right. Dinner. The dinner I apparently planned." His laugh sounded forced. "Sarah, about the guest list. Daddy, can I wear my new dress tonight?" Emma bounded into the kitchen, completely oblivious to the tension. "The purple one Grandma bought me?" "Sure, sweetheart," I said before Michael could respond. "It'll be perfect for meeting the Chin family." Michael's eye twitched. "The Chin family. Right. Remind me how I know them again?" "Dave's your colleague, honey. You've mentioned him dozens of times. And his wife Lisa works in marketing at your firm." I kept my voice light and helpful. You said just last week that you thought Dave and I would really get along, something about us both being organized types who like planning family activities. That wasn't a complete lie. Michael had mentioned Dave before, just never in the context he'd led me to believe. And Lisa seems lovely from what you told me, I continued. Wasn't she the one who gave you that restaurant recommendation for our anniversary? You said she had excellent taste. Michael's face went gray. He probably didn't even remember telling me that particular lie. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Lisa just tried to get her sister to call in a fake emergency. I overheard her in the bathroom asking Rebecca to say one of the kids was sick. Rebecca refused. Apparently Lisa's been acting weird and secretive 4 months and Rebecca's tired of covering for her. Another message followed immediately. Also found charge from jewelry store yesterday. $850 for men's watch. Want to bet your husband's wearing something new tonight? I glanced at Michael's wrist. Sure enough, there was a sleek black watch I'd never seen before. That's new, I commented, nodding toward it. He reflexively covered it with his other hand. Work bonus came through early. Thought I'd treat myself. It's beautiful. Very expensive looking. It wasn't that much, he said quickly, then seemed to realize his mistake. I mean, it was on sale. $850. That was 2 months of Emma's gymnastics lessons. Money we'd discussed spending on a family vacation to Disney World that Michael had said we couldn't afford yet. Well, you deserve nice things, I said sweetly. Especially with how hard you've been working lately. All those late nights and weekend meetings must be exhausting. He stared at me for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out if there was a hidden meaning in my words. There was, of course. Everything I'd said for the past 24 hours had hidden meanings. Sarah, he said slowly, is everything okay? You're acting different. Different how? I don't know. Just different. Like you're planning something. I smiled at my husband of 8 years, the father of my children, the man who'd been lying to my face for over 12 months while spending our savings on jewelry for his mistress. I'm always planning something, Michael. That's what good wives do. At 4:30 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Harrison? This is Janet from Romano's restaurant. I'm calling about your reservation tonight. My blood turned to ice. Yes? We've had a small mix-up with your party size. Our system shows conflicting information, table for 2 versus table for 12. And there's been a second reservation request for the same time under a chin party. Could we clarify the arrangements? Of course. Michael or Lisa must have tried to cancel or change things back. I could hear Michael upstairs, probably thinking he'd solved the problem. The table for 12 is correct, I said firmly. Mr. Harrison's assistant called yesterday to upgrade the reservation and add the Chin family. We're combining 2 celebrations into one evening. I see. And the private dining room? Essential. It's a surprise for both families. Janet sounded relieved. Wonderful. We'll have everything ready for 7 p.m. Just to confirm, party of 12, private dining room, Mr. Harrison's credit card on file? Perfect. As soon as I hung up, Michael appeared at the bottom of the stairs, phone pressed to his ear. He was wearing the Tom Ford suit again and looked like he was about to throw up. No, I understand, but he saw me watching and lowered his voice. Fine. Yes. I'll handle it. He ended the call and just stood there, staring at me. Everything all right? I asked. The restaurant called you. They did. Just confirming our party of 12. Apparently there was some confusion in their system, but I cleared it up. I tilted my head. Did you try to change our reservation, honey? He ran his hand through his hair, destroying whatever styling he'd attempted. Sarah, I think we should cancel tonight. This client thing is bigger than I thought, and... Michael. I used the voice I reserved for when the kids were about to cross the street without looking. Your parents drove 4 hours. My parents canceled their cruise. The Chin family rearranged their entire Thanksgiving. Everyone is expecting this dinner that you planned. But I didn't plan. Didn't plan what? We stared at each other. He couldn't say he didn't plan it without admitting he'd never intended to have dinner with his family tonight. Without revealing what he had actually planned. Nothing, he said finally. You're right. It's just work stress. Emma came running down the stairs in her purple dress, hair in neat braids. Do I look fancy enough for Romano's? You look beautiful, sweetheart, I said, kissing the top of her head. Daddy, doesn't Emma look lovely? Michael's face softened slightly as he looked at our daughter. For just a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. Then his phone buzzed and the moment shattered. I should go, he said, glancing at the message. Get there early to make sure everything's set up properly. Good idea. We'll meet you there at 7 with everyone else. He kissed Emma and Jake goodbye, barely brushed his lips against my cheek, and headed for the door. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for nearly 10 minutes, phone pressed to his ear, having what looked like an increasingly heated conversation. David texted, Lisa just left. Told the kids she'd see them at dinner and to be on their best behavior for the Harrison family. She has no idea what's coming, Another message, found the watch receipt in her purse. Inscription on the back says, to my love, always yours. Dated 3 days ago, I sank onto the couch, the weight of everything hitting me at once. A year of lies. A year of working late and client emergencies and you're being paranoid, Sarah. A year of me questioning my own instincts while he bought jewelry for another woman with our money. Mom? Jake appeared next to me, concerned. You look sad. Just thinking about dinner tonight, baby, I managed. It's going to be very memorable. At 6:15 p.m., I was wrestling Jake into his button-down shirt when my phone rang. My mother. Sarah, honey, I hate to do this last minute, but your father's having chest pains. We're at the ER in Syracuse right now. My heart dropped. Is he okay? The doctor thinks it's just indigestion, you know how he gets when he's anxious about driving in city traffic. But they want to keep him for observation for a few hours. She paused. We're not going to make dinner, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. We were really looking forward to meeting Michael's work friends. I closed my eyes. From 12 people to 10. From overwhelming confrontation to just overwhelming enough that Michael and Lisa couldn't slip away unnoticed. It's okay, Mom. Just take care of Dad. We'll reschedule. But even as I said it, I knew there would never be another chance like this. After tonight, Michael would be too suspicious, too careful. This was my one shot. After I hung up, Emma appeared in my bedroom doorway. Grandma and Grandpa aren't coming? Grandpa's not feeling well, sweetheart. But we'll still have Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert, plus a whole new family to meet. She seemed satisfied with this explanation, but I felt the plan starting to crack around the edges. What if other people canceled? What if David's family didn't show up? What if this elaborate confrontation fell apart and I was left looking like a crazy woman who'd orchestrated a dinner party based on paranoid suspicions? At 6:30, David called. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Lisa figured out that you and I have been in contact. My blood went cold. How? She saw your name in my recent calls. Started asking questions about why I'd been talking to Michael's wife. I told her we were coordinating carpools for the kids or something, but she's suspicious now. Really suspicious. Is she still coming to dinner? That's the thing, she can't back out now without looking guilty. She already told my parents she was excited to meet your family. But Sarah, she's going to be on high alert. If she figures out what we're doing before we can get everything out in the open, she'll warn Michael, I finished. They'll both leave before anyone understands what's happening. Exactly. I heard Jake calling for help with his shoes from downstairs. Patricia and Robert would arrive any minute, expecting a lovely family dinner planned by their thoughtful son. David, we stick to the plan. It's too late to change course now. I know. It's just, he sighed heavily. My kids are so excited about meeting your family. They don't understand why their mom's been acting weird all week. And my parents keep talking about how nice it is that Lisa's finally making friends at work. The casualty count kept growing. Not just Michael and me, not just Lisa and David, but kids and grandparents and siblings who'd walked into this battlefield without knowing a war was about to start. We could call it off, I said quietly. I could make up some emergency, get everyone to go home. We could handle this privately. There was a long pause. Then David's voice came back harder than before. No. I'm tired of private. I'm tired of secrets and lies and being made to feel crazy for noticing that my wife of 11 years suddenly needs 2 hours to run to Target. I'm tired of Lisa coming home with new lingerie that she never wears for me, and perfume that only appears on date nights I'm not invited to. He was right. We were both tired of being gaslighted by the people who promised to love and honor us. Okay, I said. We see this through. At 6:45, Patricia and Robert arrived with a casserole dish full of stuffing and questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Where's Michael? Patricia asked immediately. I thought he'd want to greet us personally for such a special occasion. He went ahead to make sure everything was perfect, I said, loading the kids into my car. You know how he is about details. Robert frowned. Actually, I don't think I do know that about Michael. He's usually pretty go with the flow. My father-in-law was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. You're right, I said carefully, buckling Emma into her booster seat. He's just been really stressed about making a good impression on his colleagues. You know how important this promotion has been to him. Another lie. Michael hadn't mentioned a promotion in months, but Patricia's face brightened immediately. A promotion? Why didn't he tell us? Robert, did you hear that? Our Michael's moving up in the world. I caught Robert's eyes in the rearview mirror as we pulled out of the driveway. He looked skeptical, but Patricia was already planning how to brag to her book club about Michael's success. The drive to Romano's took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Emma chattered about her soccer team making the playoffs while Jake practiced his multiplication tables out loud. Normal kid sounds that made my chest tight with guilt. In an hour, their world was going to implode, and they had no idea. My phone buzzed with a text from David, asterisk just arrived. Michael's already here, sitting alone at the bar. Looks like he's been drinking, asterisk. Another message, asterisk Lisa's in the bathroom, touching up her makeup for the 3rd time since we got here. She's stalling, asterisk. I pulled into Romano's parking lot at exactly 7 p.m. and spotted David's blue Honda near the entrance. Through the restaurant's front windows, I could see Michael's familiar silhouette hunched over the bar, still in that expensive navy suit. There's Daddy. Emma pointed excitedly. He looks fancy. He certainly does, Patricia agreed, then paused. Although he seems a bit tense for someone hosting a celebration dinner. We walked through Romano's entrance in a cluster, me, the kids, Patricia carrying her precious stuffing, and Robert looking increasingly puzzled by the whole situation. The hostess, a young woman with perfectly curled hair, greeted us with professional enthusiasm. Harrison party? Right this way. Your husband arrived about 20 minutes ago. He seemed very focused tonight. Michael spotted us crossing the main dining room and his face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, panic, resignation, fake smile, then something that looked almost like relief. He stood up from the bar, leaving behind what appeared to be his second whiskey. Mom, Dad, he said, embracing his parents. You made good time. The roads were clear, Robert replied, studying Michael's face. Son, you look exhausted. Are you sure you're up for entertaining tonight? Of course. This is. Michael's voice cracked slightly. This is exactly what I wanted. Family time. Emma tugged on his jacket. Daddy, where are the other people? The Chens? I want to meet kids my age. As if summoned by her question, David appeared in the restaurant entrance with a woman I immediately recognized from Michael's company holiday party photos. Lisa was petite and blonde, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Behind them came an older Asian couple who had to be David's parents, plus a teenage girl and boy who were clearly David and Lisa's children. Lisa's eyes found Michael's across the restaurant, and I watched them have an entire silent conversation in about 3 seconds. Her expression went from confusion to horror to barely controlled panic. Michael's went from resignation to terror. Sarah, he said quietly, his hand gripping my elbow, we need to talk. Privately. Right now. After dinner, honey, I said loudly enough for his parents to hear. David's family is here. Come on, let's go meet them properly. The hostess was already leading David's group toward us, chattering about the lovely private dining room and how romantic it was that Mr. Harrison had planned such a wonderful surprise for both families. Lisa moved like she was walking through quicksand, her face pale under carefully applied makeup. She kept glancing toward the exit like she was calculating escape routes. You must be Sarah, David said with forced enthusiasm, extending his hand. I'm Dave Chen. Michael's told me so much about you. And you must be Lisa, I replied, turning to shake her hand. Michael mentions you constantly. He says you two work so well together. Lisa's handshake was clammy, and she couldn't quite meet my eyes. It's nice to finally meet you. The hostess gestured toward a hallway leading to the private dining rooms. Right this way, everyone. Your table is ready. As we walked, I heard Patricia whisper to Robert, she seems nervous, doesn't she? The blonde woman. Very pale. Michael fell into step beside me, his breathing shallow. Sarah, please. Whatever you think you know. I don't think anything, I said sweetly. I'm just looking forward to getting to know your colleagues better. Especially Lisa. You've been spending so much time together lately, I feel like I should know her personally by now. Behind us, I heard David introducing his children to Emma and Jake, all of them oblivious to the adults who were about to destroy everything they thought they knew about their families. The private dining room was beautiful, soft lighting, crisp white tablecloths, and a long table set for exactly 12 people. Even with my parents' absence, there would be enough witnesses. Michael stopped in the doorway like he'd hit an invisible wall. Actually, he said, his voice too loud, I just remembered, there's been a change in the client timeline. I really do need to. Nonsense. Patricia interrupted, already settling into a chair. Work can wait one evening, Michael. When's the last time we all sat down together like this? Lisa was still hovering near the entrance, clutching her purse like a lifeline. David smoothly guided her toward the table with a hand on her back that looked supportive but was probably more restraining. Lisa was just telling me how much she's been looking forward to this, David announced to the room. She said it's been the highlight of her week. Lisa's smile looked like it was causing her physical pain. We were all sitting down now, menus being distributed, wine being offered. No more escape routes. No more delays. It was time. The wine arrived first, a bottle of Chianti that Michael had apparently pre-ordered, though his hands shook so badly the sommelier had to pour his glass twice after he knocked over the first one. Lisa declined alcohol entirely, claiming she was driving tonight, which earned her a confused look from David. I thought I was driving, he said mildly. Like always. I meant, later. For work. Early morning, thing. Lisa's voice trailed off as she realized how little sense she was making. David's mother, a sweet woman named Helen who'd been trying to make conversation for 10 minutes, finally asked the question I'd been dreading, so how did you two families become friends? Michael and Lisa worked together, but how did Sarah and David meet? The table went dead silent except for the soft jazz music playing overhead. Emma looked up from her breadstick, interested in the answer. Patricia paused with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Even Jake stopped fidgeting with his napkin. Michael's face had gone from pale to gray to an interesting shade of green. I started, then looked directly at David. Actually, David reached out to me earlier this week. He thought it would be nice for our families to meet, didn't you, David? That's right, David said, his voice steady despite the fact that his wife was now gripping her water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. I felt like Lisa and Michael were becoming such good friends at work, it seemed natural for their families to get acquainted too. Lisa made a small choking sound and reached for her napkin. Are you all right, dear? Helen asked, concerned. You've seemed upset all evening. Just work stress, Lisa managed. Big deadline coming up. Michael's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and his expression shifted from panic to confusion. That's weird. Jenkins just texted asking about the Morrison account presentation. I thought you were handling that tonight. It was a masterful move by David. He'd clearly sent a text from a colleague's phone to create exactly this moment of confusion. Lisa's eyes went wide. Yes, I am handling it. After dinner. That's why I need to. She started to stand up, but David's gentle hand on her shoulder kept her in place. Honey, you said the deadline was moved to Monday, David said with perfect confused husband innocence. Remember? That's why you were able to come tonight instead of working. Patricia leaned forward, trying to follow the conversation. I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are you both working on the same project? Michael, I thought you said your deadline was urgent. It is urgent, Michael said quickly, then looked at Lisa. Unless, did something change with the timeline? The beautiful thing about lies is how quickly they collapse when liars can't coordinate their stories in real time. Lisa and Michael were both trying to maintain their false work emergency while sitting at the same table, and the contradictions were piling up faster than they could manage. You know what's funny? I said conversationally, cutting a piece of the bread that had arrived with unnecessary precision. Michael, you mentioned this client dinner was at Romano's tonight, and Lisa, according to David, you also had a work meeting here. What are the odds? Robert set down his wine glass with a sharp clink. My father-in-law was a retired accountant who'd spent 40 years spotting inconsistencies in financial records. His expression had shifted from puzzled to suspicious to something approaching understanding. Michael, he said quietly, exactly which client are you meeting with tonight? The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything. Michael's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. Dad, it's complicated. The client situation is evolving. Evolving how? Patricia asked, her maternal radar finally activating. And why does Mrs. Chen also have a work meeting at the exact same restaurant on Thanksgiving night? That seems like quite a coincidence. Lisa's breathing had become shallow and rapid. She was having what looked like the beginning of a panic attack, and David's children were starting to notice their mother's distress. We'd reached the point of no return. David's teenage daughter, Amy, reached across the table and touched her mother's arm. Mom? You're breathing really weird. Are you okay? That simple question from a concerned child seemed to snap something in Lisa. She looked around the table, at her kids, at David's parents who'd driven 4 hours, at Patricia who was still holding her famous stuffing and looking increasingly worried, and her facade finally cracked completely. "I can't do this," she whispered, then louder, "I can't do this anymore." She stood up so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor with a harsh screech. Michael immediately started to rise as well, but David's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Sit down, Michael." It wasn't a request. David pulled out his phone and placed it face up on the white tablecloth. "I think it's time everyone understood what's really happening here." "David, don't," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "Please. Not in front of the kids." "You should have thought about the kids before you started booking hotel rooms with other people's husbands," David replied, his calm tone more devastating than shouting would have been. Patricia's wine glass hit the table with a sharp clink. "Hotel rooms? What hotel rooms?" Helen looked between her daughter-in-law and my husband with growing horror. "Lisa? What is he talking about?" Michael was now standing too, his hands raised in a gesture that was either surrender or plea. "Everyone just needs to calm down. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I pulled out my own phone, my hands remarkably steady despite the fact that my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Because I have some very interesting hotel receipts here. Marriott downtown, room 847, every Thursday for 2 months. Charged to your credit card, Michael." Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, what's a hotel receipt?" Before I could answer, Robert stood up with the authority of a man who'd spent decades chairing board meetings. "Children, why don't you all go look at the dessert display in the main dining room? Take your time choosing what you'd like." Amy, who was 16 and clearly understood more than the younger kids, hesitated. "Dad? What's happening?" "Go with the little ones, sweetheart," David said quietly. "Make sure they're okay." After the children reluctantly left, the private dining room felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Lisa was still standing, swaying slightly, while Michael had sunk back into his chair with his head in his hands. 11 years, David said, his voice steady but his knuckles white where he gripped his phone. 11 years of marriage, Lisa. 3 kids together. And you've been spending our anniversary money on lingerie for him." He swiped to a photo on his phone, a credit card statement, and showed it to the table. "Victoria's Secret, $300, November 21st. That's this Tuesday. Want to explain to my parents what you bought, honey?" Helen made a small, hurt sound. "Lisa, tell me this isn't what it sounds like." "I can explain," Michael said desperately, finally looking up. It's not what you think." "Then explain the jewelry," I said, nodding toward his wrist. $850 for a watch I've never seen before. Engraved, according to the receipt Lisa kept. "To my love, always yours." "Was that for me, Michael?" "Because I don't remember getting any engraved watches lately." Patricia's face had gone completely white. "Michael Harrison, look at me right now." The use of his full name, something she hadn't done since he was 12 and broke her grandmother's vase, made Michael flinch visibly. "Mom, I can fix this. It's complicated, but I can." "How long?" Robert's voice cut through his son's pleading. "How long has this been going on?" The question everyone needed answered hung in the air. Michael looked at Lisa, who was now crying silently, black mascara creating tracks down her cheeks. "Answer your father," Patricia said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. 13 months, Lisa whispered. "It's been 13 months." The number hit the table like a physical blow. 13 months of lies. 13 months of working late and client emergencies and elaborate deceptions that had fooled everyone who loved them. Everyone except David, who'd been quietly gathering evidence for weeks. And me, who'd finally stopped believing the lies. Helen's hand flew to her chest like she'd been struck. 13 months? "Lisa, you looked me in the eye at Christmas dinner and told me how grateful you were for David. You said he was the best husband a woman could ask for." "I am grateful," Lisa said through her tears, which only made David's laugh sound more bitter. "Grateful enough to spend our mortgage payment on hotel rooms," he said, pulling up another bank statement on his phone. $2,000 last month alone. The Marriott downtown, the Hilton by the airport, that bed and breakfast in the mountains you told me was a work retreat. Patricia was staring at her son like she'd never seen him before. "The mountains? Michael, you told us you were at a client conference in Albany in October." "I was working," Michael said weakly. "It was a work trip." "With your coworker's wife," Robert said flatly. "In the Adirondacks. At a romantic bed and breakfast." I pulled up the reservation confirmation on my phone, another gift from David's detective work. The Whispering Pines Inn. Booked under Mr. and Mrs. Harrison for 3 nights. They have a hot tub in every room and complimentary champagne service. Emma's voice came from the doorway. "Mommy?" "The man said we have to order dessert now or the kitchen closes." And Amy's crying. The children had returned at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe the right one. Emma looked between all the adults with growing concern, while Jake hung back uncertainly. Amy was indeed crying, having clearly overheard enough to understand what was happening to her family. David immediately went to his daughter, wrapping her in a hug. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." "No, it's not," Amy said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Mom's been lying to us, hasn't she? That's why you've been sad all the time. That's why she keeps getting dressed up for work meetings that never used to matter before." Over Amy's head, David's eyes met mine. His 15-year-old daughter had been watching her mother's behavior change, just like Emma and Jake had noticed their father's distance. The kids always knew something was wrong, even when the adults thought they were hiding it perfectly. "I want to go home," Jake announced, picking up on the tension even if he didn't understand it. "This isn't fun anymore." Michael stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "You're right, buddy. Let's all go home. This was a mistake." "Sit down," Patricia commanded, using the voice that had terrified Michael throughout his childhood. "You don't get to run away from this, Michael Robert Harrison. You don't get to destroy 2 families and then leave because it's uncomfortable." Lisa was frantically texting someone, probably her sister or a friend, looking for an escape route or advice that wouldn't come fast enough to save her. "Who else knows?" Helen asked quietly. "Who else have you told about this relationship?" The question I hadn't thought to ask. Michael and Lisa exchanged another look, and I saw something pass between them that made my stomach drop. Your sister Rebecca knows, doesn't she? David asked Lisa, his voice dangerously quiet. That's why she wouldn't help you fake an emergency tonight. She's been covering for you. And Tom from accounting, I added, pieces clicking into place. That's why he gave Michael such a weird look at the company picnic. He knows about the hotel receipts because he processes the expense reports. Michael's face went gray. Sarah, that's not. How many people have been watching our marriage fall apart while pretending everything was normal? I asked, my voice getting louder. How many people knew my husband was cheating before I did? The silence that followed my question was deafening. Even the soft jazz music seemed to have stopped, though that might have been my imagination. Michael's face cycled through expressions like a broken slot machine, denial, panic, resignation, then something that looked almost like relief. Sarah, he said quietly, can we please just answer the question? Patricia's voice could have frozen hell over. How many people knew about this affair before your wife did? Lisa's phone buzzed against the table where she'd dropped it, and I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen, Rebecca. Her sister was probably calling to see if she'd managed to escape yet. Michael ran his hands through his hair, destroying what was left of his careful styling. It's not like we announced it to people. Some people figured it out. Figured it out how? Robert demanded. Did you hold hands in the office? Kiss in the parking lot? How exactly did your colleagues piece together that you were betraying your families? Dad, please. Don't. Patricia's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare, Dad, please him. You're 32 years old, Michael. You made adult choices. Now give us adult answers. David was still holding Amy, but his attention was laser-focused on Michael. The company knows, don't they? HR knows. That's why Lisa's been talking about transferring to the Portland office. Lisa's head snapped up, fresh tears spilling over. David, how did you? I called your boss yesterday, David said calmly. Told him you'd been acting strangely and I was worried about your mental health. Wanted to know if there was unusual stress at work. His smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Very enlightening conversation. Helen was staring at her daughter-in-law like she'd never seen her before. You were going to move? To Portland? Without discussing it with your family? It's complicated, Lisa whispered. No, I said, standing up so abruptly that Emma stepped back toward the wall. It's not complicated. It's actually very simple. You're in love with my husband, and you were planning to relocate your entire life to be with him. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Emma's eyes went wide, and Jake moved closer to his grandfather Robert, seeking comfort from someone who felt safe. Mommy? Emma's voice was small and confused. Are you and Daddy getting divorced? The question every adult in the room had been avoiding hit the table like a bomb. Michael immediately dropped to one knee next to Emma, his face desperate. Sweetheart, no. Daddy and Mommy just need to work some things out. Everything's going to be fine. No, I said firmly, looking down at my daughter's upturned face. Everything is not going to be fine, Michael. Don't lie to her too. Robert stood up with the slow, deliberate movements of a man trying to control his temper. Emma, Jake, come with Grandpa. Let's go get that dessert and give the grown-ups time to talk. I want to stay with Mommy, Emma said, wrapping her arms around my waist. And I want you to stay with me too, baby, I said, stroking her hair. But Grandpa's right. This is grown-up talk. As Robert led the younger children away, Amy pulled back from David's embrace. I'm 16, Dad. I'm not leaving. I want to hear what she has to say. She was looking at Lisa with a mixture of hurt and disgust that was heartbreaking to witness. Lisa reached toward her daughter, but Amy stepped back. Don't touch me, Amy said quietly. Just don't. Amy, please. You don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to us for over a year, Amy shot back. I understand that every time you said you were working late, you were actually with him. She pointed at Michael like he was something toxic. I understand that you bought new clothes and started going to the gym and told us it was for your health, but it was really to look good for your boyfriend. The word boyfriend made Michael flinch visibly. Helen made a small, wounded sound. And I understand, Amy continued, her voice getting stronger and angrier, that you were going to uproot our entire lives and move us across the country without telling us why. Were you planning to bring him with us? Or were you just going to abandon Dad and start over? Lisa was crying harder now, her careful makeup completely destroyed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Patricia asked coldly. Were you going to divorce your families quietly and hope the children just accepted it? Were you planning to marry each other after destroying 4 other people's lives? Another silence fell, but this one felt different. Heavier. Like we'd finally reached the bottom of the pit and were staring at bedrock. David cleared his throat. Actually, he said, his voice carefully controlled, I think that's exactly what they were planning. David pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before, thick manila with papers filling out the edges. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as he placed it on the white tablecloth between the abandoned wine glasses and untouched bread. I've been busy this week, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Turns out when you hire a private investigator, you learn all sorts of interesting things about the people you thought you knew. Lisa's face went completely white. David, what did you do? What I should have done months ago, he replied, opening the folder. I documented everything. The first photograph he pulled out was grainy but unmistakably clear, Michael and Lisa kissing in the parking lot of the Marriott downtown. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I remembered that Thursday. Michael had called to say he'd be working through dinner because of a client crisis. November 7th, David said conversationally, like he was discussing the weather. While Sarah was at Jake's parent-teacher conference and I was helping Amy with her college applications. Patricia leaned forward, squinting at the photo. Is that? Michael, is that you? Michael couldn't seem to find his voice. He just sat there, staring at the image of himself betraying our family in broad daylight. David pulled out another photo. This one showed them entering the lobby of an upscale hotel, Lisa's hand in Michael's back pocket, both of them laughing at some private joke. The Westin, October 23rd. Lisa told me she was at a marketing seminar that weekend. Said it was boring but mandatory. His laugh was bitter. Funny thing about hotel security cameras, they keep records for 90 days. Helen covered her mouth with both hands. Oh, Lisa. How could you? There's more, David continued, his voice getting harder. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals that don't match any legitimate expenses. Restaurant receipts from places they told us they'd never been. And this. He pulled out what looked like a lease agreement. My stomach dropped to my shoes as I recognized the letterhead from a property management company in Portland. One-bedroom apartment, downtown Portland. Lease starts January 1st, signed by Lisa Chen and Michael Harrison as co-tenants. The words hit the table like physical blows. Co-tenants. They hadn't just been having an affair, they'd been planning a future together. While I was helping Jake with homework and planning Emma's birthday party, Michael had been signing lease agreements for an apartment I'd never see with a woman who wasn't his wife. You were going to leave us, Amy whispered, staring at her mother. You were actually going to leave us and move in with him. Lisa's tears had turned into full sobs now. Amy, it's complicated. The marriage situation is complicated, and what's complicated about abandoning your children? Patricia's voice could have cut steel. What's complicated about planning a new life while lying to the people who love you every single day? I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been cracking for months finally snapping completely. January 1st, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. Were you planning to tell me before Christmas? Or were you going to let Emma and Jake open presents from Daddy before you announced you were leaving us for your coworker's wife? Michael finally found his voice. Sarah, it wasn't, we weren't going to just disappear. We were going to handle this properly, explain things to everyone. When? Robert demanded, standing up so fast his chair tilted backward. When exactly were you going to handle this properly? After you'd already signed the lease? After you'd already decided our grandchildren's lives didn't matter? The door to the private dining room opened, and Emma's small face appeared. Mommy? The dessert place is closed, and Jake says his tummy hurts. I immediately went to her, kneeling down to her eye level. Behind her, I could see Jake leaning heavily against Robert, his face pale and confused. What's wrong with everyone? Emma asked, looking around the room at all the crying adults. Why is everyone so sad? Before I could answer, Amy spoke up from across the room. Because some people are liars, Emma. Some people make promises they never plan to keep. Amy, David warned quietly. No, Dad. She should know. They should both know that their dad was planning to move away and start a new family. Amy's voice was getting louder, more desperate. Just like Mom was going to take us away from you and pretend it was for your job. Emma looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. Daddy's moving away? The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Michael moved toward us, but I held up a hand to stop him. We'll talk about it at home, baby, I said quietly. Right now, let's just get you and Jake somewhere quiet. I want to go home now, Jake announced from the doorway, his voice shaky. I don't like this restaurant anymore. None of us liked this restaurant anymore. What was supposed to be our moment of triumphant revelation had turned into a nightmare that was traumatizing children and destroying what was left of two families. David carefully closed the folder, his evidence safely contained but the damage already done. The investigator found something else, he said quietly. Something I think you should all know before anyone leaves here tonight. Lisa's head snapped up. David, please. No more. The kids. The kids deserve honesty for once in their lives, he replied firmly. They deserve to know why their families are falling apart. He pulled out one more document, this one official looking with a law firm letterhead. Divorce papers, he said simply. Filed 3 weeks ago. Lisa's already retained an attorney and started the process. She was planning to serve me right after Christmas. The final piece clicked into place with devastating clarity. Lisa hadn't just been planning to leave her family, she'd been actively, legally preparing to do it while pretending everything was normal at home. While her children made Christmas lists and her husband planned holiday traditions, she'd been meeting with lawyers and plotting her escape. Helen's gasp was audible across the room. You filed for divorce? Without telling anyone? Without even trying counseling? We tried counseling 2 years ago, Lisa said defensively, wiping her face with her napkin. It didn't work. Because you were already sleeping with my husband. The words came out louder than I intended, making Emma flinch against my side. You went to marriage counseling while having an affair. David's jaw tightened. Wait. 2 years ago? Lisa, you said this started 13 months ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's face cycled through panic, then resignation, then something that looked almost like relief at being caught in yet another lie. It wasn't, we weren't physical then, she said weakly. It was just emotional at first. Emotional? Patricia's voice cracked. You had an emotional affair with my son while going to marriage counseling with your husband? Michael was staring at Lisa like he'd never seen her before. You told me it started after the summer conference. You said you'd never felt this way before, that it was spontaneous. Oh my God, I breathed, the timeline becoming clear. The summer conference was 8 months ago, Michael. Not 13. How long has this actually been going on? Amy made a sound like she'd been punched. 2 years? Mom, I was 14 when this started. I was in 8th grade, and you were already. She couldn't finish the sentence. Emma tugged on my dress. Mommy, what's an emotional affair? Before I could figure out how to answer that question, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Rebecca, Lisa's sister. David called me. I'm in the parking lot. The kids don't need to hear any more of this. Can I take Emma and Jake to get ice cream? Asterisk. I looked up to see a woman with Lisa's blonde hair standing uncertainly in the doorway of the private dining room. She looked mortified but determined. Rebecca? Helen called out, recognizing her other daughter-in-law. What are you doing here? Damage control, Rebecca said grimly, then looked directly at Lisa. This is exactly what I told you would happen if you kept lying to everyone. Exactly what I warned you about 6 months ago. 6 months? David's voice was dangerously quiet. Rebecca, what did you know 6 months ago? Rebecca looked around the room at all the devastated faces, the crying teenagers, the shell-shocked grandparents, the two small children who just wanted ice cream and their normal lives back. Lisa called me in May, crying because Michael had given her an ultimatum. Said he wanted her to leave David by the end of summer or he was ending it. Rebecca's voice was steady but tired. I told her she was destroying two families and that someone was going to get hurt. She said she had it under control. Michael's face went gray. Lisa, you told your sister about that conversation? You promised me that was private between us. You gave her an ultimatum? I stared at my husband in disbelief. You demanded that she divorce her family for you? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Robert demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've been manipulating two women and four children for your own selfish desires. Amy pulled away from David and walked directly to Michael, stopping inches from his face. My mom was happy before she met you. She used to laugh at Dad's jokes and help me with my homework and make pancakes on Sunday mornings. When did you decide that wasn't enough? When did you decide our family should be destroyed so you could have what you wanted? Michael opened his mouth, but no sound came out. What could he possibly say to a 16-year-old whose life he'd helped demolish? Rebecca moved further into the room, her maternal instincts taking over. Emma, Jake, how about we go get some dessert somewhere quieter? Let the adults finish their conversation? Can Amy come too? Emma asked, looking at the older girl with concern. She looks really sad. Amy glanced at her father, who nodded. That sounds good, sweetheart. I'll come get you in a little while. As Rebecca shepherded the children out, she paused next to Lisa. I love you, but I'm done covering for you. David deserved better than this, and those kids deserved better than this. She looked at Michael with undisguised disgust. And you should be ashamed of yourself. After they left, the private dining room felt like a tomb. The adults who remained, me, Michael, Lisa, David, Patricia, Robert, and Helen, sat surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been two functioning families. So what now? Helen asked quietly. Lisa's already filed for divorce. Michael, are you planning to do the same? All eyes turned to my husband, who was slumped in his chair like a broken marionette. The question I'd been avoiding all week hung in the air between us. Michael? I said softly. Are you? Michael's head was still in his hands when his phone started buzzing insistently against the white tablecloth. The sound cut through the heavy silence like an alarm, and when he glanced at the screen, his face went from gray to green. Jenkins, he said weakly. My boss. Answer it, Patricia commanded. Right now. Put it on speaker. Mom, that's not. Put it on speaker, Michael. With shaking fingers, Michael accepted the call and tapped the speaker button. Jenkins's voice filled the private dining room, crisp and professional. Harrison, thank God you picked up. We have a problem. Massive problem. The Morrison account just called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They somehow found out about your situation with Lisa Chen from marketing. David leaned forward, his eyes sharp. What situation, Mr. Jenkins? There was a pause. I'm sorry, who is this? David Chen. Lisa's husband. We're all having dinner together. David's voice was perfectly calm, perfectly reasonable. What situation were you referring to? The silence on Jenkins's end stretched for what felt like an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. Oh. Oh, Christ. Michael, please tell me you didn't bring both families together without telling them first. Telling them what, exactly? I asked, leaning toward the phone. Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is Sarah Harrison, Michael's wife. There's been no misunderstanding. We know about the affair. What we don't know is how it's affecting my husband's job. Another pause, then Jenkins's heavy sigh came through the speaker. Mrs. Harrison, I'm very sorry you're finding out this way. The company became aware of the relationship 3 weeks ago when a client spotted Michael and Lisa together at the Ritz downtown. Not for business, they were intimate. The client called to confirm whether this represented our company's professional standards. Patricia's face went completely white. The Ritz? Michael, that's where your father and I had our anniversary dinner last month. Different night, Mom, Michael said weakly. Same restaurant where you said the food was overpriced and pretentious, Robert added, his voice deadly quiet. Same restaurant you said you'd never waste money on. Jenkins continued, apparently unaware he was speaking to an audience. HR started an investigation immediately. We've documented multiple policy violations, expense account abuse, inappropriate workplace conduct, potential conflict of interest issues with shared clients. David's hand tightened on his water glass. Expense account abuse? Hotel charges, restaurant bills, even what appears to be jewelry purchases, all coded as client entertainment expenses. We're talking about potentially $15,000 in fraudulent charges over the past year. $15,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. Our family vacation fund. Emma's college savings. The roof repair we'd put off because Michael said money was tight. Jenkins, Michael said desperately, we can discuss this privately tomorrow. Actually, we can't. Morrison Industries is our biggest client, Michael. They're threatening to pull their contract if we don't take immediate action. As of close of business tomorrow, both you and Mrs. Chen are being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Lisa spoke for the first time in 10 minutes, her voice hoarse from crying. What does that mean for the Portland position? Jenkins's pause was telling. Mrs. Chen, there is no Portland position. That transfer request was denied 2 weeks ago when HR flagged the relationship. I assumed Michael had told you. The final lie crumbled in real time. Lisa's face went through shock, then betrayal, then something approaching rage as she turned to stare at Michael. You said it was approved, she said quietly. You said we just needed to wait until after the holidays to make it official. Lisa, I was handling it. There were just some bureaucratic delays. Bureaucratic delays? Her voice cracked like a whip. I filed for divorce. I told my children we were moving. I gave my sister as a reference for the Portland apartment. Helen made a small, wounded sound. Lisa, honey, what apartment? The apartment that doesn't exist, David said flatly, pulling out his folder again. I called the Portland Property Management Company yesterday. There's no lease, no application, no records of any kind for Michael Harrison or Lisa Chin. The room went dead silent except for the jazz music still playing overhead, now sounding mockingly cheerful against the devastation unfolding around the dinner table. Michael's phone buzzed with another call. Jenkins again. Don't answer it, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I think we've heard enough. But the damage was done. Michael hadn't just been lying to me, he'd been lying to Lisa too. The Portland job, the apartment, the future he'd promised her, all of it had been elaborate fiction designed to keep her invested in an affair that was now costing both of them their careers. How long have you known? Lisa asked Michael, her voice deadly quiet. How long have you known there was no Portland job? Michael's silence was answer enough. Amy's voice cut through the silence like a blade. 2 weeks. You've known for 2 weeks that there was no job, and you let Mom destroy our family for nothing. Lisa stood up so fast her chair toppled over backwards with a crash that seemed to echo in the suddenly too small room. You son of a bitch. You absolute son of a bitch. Lisa, wait, Michael started to rise, but David's hand slammed down on the table with enough force to make the wine glasses jump. Don't. You. Dare. David's voice was barely controlled fury. You don't get to comfort her. You don't get to explain this away. You convinced my wife to divorce me for a job that never existed and an apartment you never rented. Patricia was staring at her son like he was a stranger. Michael Robert Harrison, what have you become? The question hung in the air as Lisa paced behind her overturned chair, her hands shaking with rage. $15,000 of company money. Our kids' college funds. David's promotion savings that I helped you spend on hotel rooms. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. I gave up everything for you, and you've been lying to me for months. The timeline doesn't even work, I said, pieces clicking together with devastating clarity. If HR flagged your relationship 2 weeks ago, and the Portland job was denied then, you knew before Thanksgiving that none of this was going to happen the way you promised Lisa. Michael's face was the color of old parchment. I thought I could fix it. I thought if we waited until after the holidays. You thought you could keep both women on the hook while you figured out your next move, Robert said, his disappointment more cutting than anger would have been. You thought you could manage us all like a project timeline. Helen was crying quietly now, her hands pressed to her mouth. Those poor children. Amy, and your Emma and Jake, they're losing their families because you two couldn't tell the truth about anything. The door opened and Rebecca appeared, her face grim. The kids are settled at the ice cream place next door. Emma's asking when Daddy's coming home for good, and Jake wants to know if you and Michael are getting divorced like his friend Connor's parents. She looked directly at me. What should I tell them? Before I could answer, Lisa rounded on Michael with fury I'd never seen from another human being. Tell them their father is a liar and a fraud who destroyed 2 families for an affair he was already planning to end. That's not true, Michael said desperately. Isn't it? David pulled out his phone, scrolling to something that made his jaw tighten. Because I also found your browsing history, Michael. Dating profiles on 3 different apps, all created last month. All listing you as separated and looking for something casual. The final revelation hit like a physical blow. Michael hadn't just been lying about Portland, he'd been preparing to abandon Lisa too, once the novelty wore off and the reality of actually divorced life set in. Lisa's laugh was brittle and broken. Dating apps. While I was planning our future, you were shopping for my replacement. Patricia stood up with the slow, deliberate movements of a woman who'd heard enough. Michael, look at me. When he finally met her eyes, she spoke with the quiet authority of someone delivering a verdict. Your father and I raised you to be better than this. We raised you to honor your commitments and protect the people you love. You have failed completely as a husband, as a father, and as a man. She turned to me, her voice softening slightly. Sarah, those children need stability and honesty. They need a parent who puts their welfare first. She looked back at Michael with unmistakable finality. They need you. I stood up, feeling steady for the first time in months. You're right. They do need me. And they need the truth, age-appropriately delivered, about why Daddy won't be living with us anymore. Michael's face crumpled. Sarah, please. We can work this out. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want, I said quietly, is to stop being married to a man who thinks love is something you can manage and manipulate. What I want is to raise my children to be better than this. I picked up my purse and looked around the private dining room one last time, at the abandoned wine glasses and untouched food, at the evidence folders and broken families, at the wreckage of what was supposed to be our Thanksgiving surprise. The kids and I are going home now. Michael, you can collect your things this weekend when they're at my parents' house. I paused at the doorway. And next Thanksgiving? We'll be grateful for the truth, whatever it costs us. As I walked toward the ice cream shop to collect Emma and Jake, I could hear Lisa's voice behind me, finally asking David the question that mattered. Can you ever forgive me? His answer followed me down the hallway. I don't know. But I'm willing to try to find out. Some families, I realized, might survive this Thanksgiving after all. Just not the ones we'd started the evening with.